failure is also inevitable in careers.
Yeah.
And is there a time you failed as you were going through, and what did you learn from it?
I have learned that failure is the S curve to my growth. I have failed so many times with so many things, but I think my first real big failure came when I joined Booth, the business school at University of Chicago. Let me give you some context. Like I was joining the GSB, what we used to call the GSB back then, and I had just gotten divorced from my first husband. It was 6 years of hell. My confidence level could not have been lower. Um, and I was coming back to Chicago to kind of rebuild myself, right? And I remember like this was going to be, I was going to change the world. And so I remember taking one of my first courses, and it was a case course, and I'd never done case studies before, right? And so I'm Indian. I think some people might appreciate this. Like there should be a perfect answer to everything. 3.269, right? Like it's you're taught like there's always a perfect answer to everything, but it's a case. There is no perfect answer. It's about how you think. I didn't figure that out. So every case that I was like submitting, I got an F. I'm like, I've never gotten an F in my life. I'm like, what is this? And I could not get help. It was not the best professor in the world. So I had a friend at another business school, and sitting there telling her about it, and she said, "Well, I've done this case that you're about to submit. Let me just send you my notes." I'm like, "Okay, fine. Let's see if that helps." So she sent the notes, submitted my case, and the professor called me the next day and said, "You need to come and see me." I was like, "Man, I must have done really well. Professor's calling me." So I show up the next day, and he's like, "Yeah, you're meeting the dean tomorrow because we're starting proceedings to expel you." I was like, "Excuse me?" And he's like, "Yeah, let me show you the answer key to the case, and let me show you your answer to the case." I was like, "What?" So the notes she sent me were basically the answer key to the case, which I didn't know. So I go to see the dean the next day, Dean Harry Roberts. He's still there. And, he says to me, "Tell me your side of the story." And I did. And he said, "Okay. So I'm going to ask you one question. And based on that answer, I'm going to decide whether to expel you or not." I was like, "Okay, bring it on. What did you learn from this experience?" And I thought, wow, great question. But I thought about it. I said, "Dean, I think for me, this is the first time in my life I understood the difference between being right and doing what is right. And I never understood the difference before." I said, "Good answer." He said, "You're not going to be expelled." And he ended up like taking me in his lab courses, and I helped him. We developed a great relationship. But he said, "You're still going to fail the course because the final grade is determined on the final, and it's like 70% of the grade." I'm like, "Oh, okay." Next day, I show up for the final, and guess what? It's another freaking case, right? So here I am. I got my blue book. Still don't know anything different. But this time, I filled out the blue book based on what I thought was right. When the grades came out, I got the highest score in the final. And I thought it was a pity grade from the professor. He's like, I didn't even grade the exam. So what you got is what you got." And the epiphany went off. The epiphany was, if I would just believe in myself, just not try to perform to some sort of arbitrary expectation, but just do what I thought was right. That is far more important about getting ahead and for me to excel in the world than I ever gave myself credit for. And honestly, it was the S curve to my career.